It is Big Ten Saturday night, Minnesota, Ohio State, NBC and Peacock. Here comes Saturday night, presented by Discover. First game of the weekend in the NFL, the Vikings and the Browns from London. Dylan Gabriel makes his NFL debut. You can see that on NFL Network. They start at 9:30 a.m. Eastern from London, exclusively on NFL Network. NFL Network analyst Kurt Warner joining us on the program. Would you have started Dylan Gabriel overseas against Minnesota for his debut?
I'm not sure that would have been the route that I went. I understand why, understand where they're at. I understand it's the NFL, so there's not any easy game, so to speak. But yeah, that's a lot of things going on, along with playing against a Brian Flores defense that's going to throw a lot of looks at you. That I don't think it's going to be an easy one for Dylan Gabriel. But Minnesota obviously didn't play great last week either, so maybe you look at this as an opportunity to get a win and get on track.
What advice would you give Dylan Gabriel?
I think the biggest thing is just realize that you don't have to do it all on your own. I think when the spotlight is on you and you get put into that position, the first thing to do is to say, okay, I gotta prove to everybody why I'm starting now, and I got to go out and make all of these plays. And when I took over in '99, I looked around and said, okay, I got a lot of playmakers around me. I don't have to do this all by myself. Allow them to help you along the way. It's okay to punt every once in a while because you got a great defense that can help you out. And so not feeling like that spotlight is on you and you have to prove to everybody why you're the starter right now.
How do you teach a young quarterback to get rid of the ball?
I think getting rid of the ball is understanding what you're seeing, a comfort level with the plays that you're running. To me, it's always about, if you know where your eyes should be to start the process, that's the first step in being able to get the ball out, knowing what you're doing, and getting through your progressions. And sometimes with young guys, and again, against a Brian Flores defense, they're going to give you lots of things to look at. They're going to give guys up at the line of scrimmage. They're going to have guys running out into zone coverage. So they're going to make that harder. But understanding your playbook so well that, hey, in this kind of look, this is where my eyes need to start, and that speeds up the process. So that would be what I would always be focusing on with a young quarterback.
What was your thought when the Rams were going to go on fourth down in overtime and go for the win as opposed to go for the tie?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the decision at all. You're at home. You want to get one against a division rival. Was surprised, I think, like a lot of people, with the play call. I just talked earlier in the week about how the Rams are so good, especially getting close to the red zone with their naked bootleg, play action game. Matthew Stafford's so good at it. They're creative with it. That's where I thought they would go, to give more options to Matthew Stafford instead of just running it right up the gut. So I more disappointed, I think, with the play call than I was the decision to go for it on fourth down, because I fully understand why you want to win that game, especially with San Francisco being as beat up as they were. You didn't want to come out of that thing saying, "Oh man, we lost," or even we tied that team. Unfortunately, it worked out that way. But I think they're probably reeling a little bit today, because everybody going in are like, "Oh my gosh, it's going to be a walk in the park for the Rams." And Mac Jones played great, and the team showed up and had a great win.
Give me the most must-win game of the weekend for you.
For me, it's going to be Texans-Ravens. Both teams, I think, high hopes for both teams, expected to win their division, both sitting at 1-3 right now, and neither one playing very good football. I know Texans got a win last week, but, that was against a Tennessee team that hasn't won yet. So CJ Stroud doesn't look the same to me. Their offense doesn't look good to me. And then on the other side, I think we know all the issues, and then the possibility of not having their star quarterback in Lamar Jackson. I think that is a must-win for both of these teams with where that division is going right now.
But explain to me what's going on with C.J. Stroud.
I wish I could. When he was a rookie, I had him in my top 5 quarterbacks in the league, the way that he played his rookie year. And it was his ability to see things and his accuracy and the technique that was with it. In the last 2 years, I don't know. I really can't tell you what's going on. I don't feel like he's seeing it very well. I feel like he's missing things. I feel like when they bring pressure, he doesn't have answers. And it's weird to me, because very seldom, obviously, do you see that when a young guy seems to have those answers and do those things, and then it falls away from them And it's really been the last year and a half where I don't believe he's playing, as well as he did. And a lot of people point to the offensive line and some of the issues up there. But I think it starts with CJ. And, just watching him, he's not making the throws and making the decisions that he did as a rookie. And I can't tell you, I can't put a finger on it because he was so good as a rookie. It's hard for me to fact what's gone wrong or what's gone sideways on this to take him to where he is right now.
Talking to Kurt Warner, the Hall of Famer and Super Bowl MVP, two-time NFL MVP. NFL Network will have the Vikings and the Browns. That'll be 9:30 Eastern from London. We've had a couple of conversations this week. One is focused on Russell Wilson. Can you play yourself out of the Hall of Fame? Now, I don't know if you had him in the Hall of Fame, but he's playing himself maybe out of consideration for the Hall of Fame. Do you believe that, given that he had a 10-year run that was pretty impressive, these last couple of years have been pretty rough?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say play your way out of it. I think what I would say in these last few years with Russell is maybe it gives you a different perspective of the kind of player that he was. Is that, when he was in Seattle, obviously they had a great defense when they went on their run, and he was asked to be more of a complementary piece, more of a playmaking piece, than actually, playing more drop back quarterback, carrying the team with his right arm. And so when he left, I think the idea, I think it was Russell's idea as well as wherever he chose, is that he wanted to show people that he could play the position more conventionally and more like, I think, guys like Brady and Manning and those things. And he didn't have to just be a playmaker. And then that hasn't worked out. And, he tried in numerous spots now, and it hasn't worked out to show people that. And so I think if anything, it maybe gets people to look back and go, okay, who is the real Russell Wilson here? And again, I don't know if that plays anybody out of the Hall of Fame, because you mentioned it. The first decade statistically was really, really impressive. But I think it may have people step back and go, okay, who is, the guy that we're looking at? And, the Hall of Fame type of thing, was he an elite player at that position comparative to other players? And, as well as I do, that there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I mean, look at my situation is I didn't play as many games and certain things, but when I played at a high level. So I was able to get in. Some other guys may not have played at quite a high level, but played longer and have better stats and those things, and they get into the Hall of Fame. And so there's so many ways to weigh, I think, what the Hall of Fame is. But that's what I would say. Not necessarily play his way out of it, but have people look at him a little bit differently and kind of compare the two quarterbacks to decide, okay, who was Russell Wilson and does he fit in that category?
But if you don't go to Arizona, are you getting into the Hall of Fame?
I mean, I would highly doubt it. Even though, there was an elite level of play and 2 Super Bowls and 2 MVPs in St. Louis, I think ultimately it would have been just not enough time to be able to have, another 3 years and go to another Super Bowl with another team. I think is what kind of stamped that, and again, it could have easily said, hey, this guy at his peak, was a Hall of Fame quarterback, but that peak wasn't long enough. And so, again, I think we've seen a lot of different ways for guys to, solidify themselves as Hall of Famers. And, that becomes the ultimate question, at the end of the day. I mean, you have Eli Manning that's right there on the cusp. And I think they're weighing heavily Super Bowls, right? Super Bowls and, winning Super Bowls. Well, Russell has been to 2 Super Bowls. I know he only won one of those, but, so what exactly is the determining factor in getting to the Hall of Fame? I don't know if anybody knows exactly. And as you said, and we mentioned that first 10 years, I think, you asked me if I didn't go to, Arizona, would I have been in the Hall of Fame? Probably not. If Russell Wilson didn't go anywhere else besides Seattle, would he be in the Hall of Fame? And the answer is probably yes.
Yeah. I remember I spoke to you, maybe it was the season that you went to the Super Bowl in Arizona, and we talked about what am I a Hall of Famer? And I said no, but if you take Arizona to the Super Bowl, you'd be a Hall of Famer. Do you remember we had that conversation?
I do, yep.
After the game, and I was there to hand out the trophy, but I sought you out. I wanted to find you after the game, And I remember the only thing I said to you when I walked up to you, I think you were with your wife, and I said, "You're going to the Hall of Fame." That was the only thing I think I said to you, because obviously you're distraught because, you think you're winning the Super Bowl. And I just remember you're going to the Super Bowl, and it stayed in my head that whole time after I talked to you, and you got to the Super Bowl, could have won the Super Bowl, and you went to the Hall of Fame. One other thing I want to bring up, we just had a caller saying, what quarterback had the biggest impact or changed the game the most in NFL history, in your opinion?
Yeah.
Who would you single out?
That's a good question. And again, I don't know about one quarterback, because I think about Dan Marino and how, he played the game so differently at that time. I think they were a pass first team. I think about our offense in St. Louis. I think we, changed the way the game was played, and what we see now, I think really started with our team. And then I heard you talking a little bit about Peyton Manning. And the one thing I would say about Peyton Manning is there's no doubt Peyton Manning was the best quarterback we've ever seen before the snap, at playing the game before the snap, changing plays, knowing what a defense was going to do. But I wouldn't say that necessarily transformed the game, because I don't know if there's been anybody anywhere close to Peyton at doing that. And so when I think about changing the game, it's about, okay, how did I, lead the next generation into playing a similar way? And maybe you look at a guy like a Michael Vick, because of where the NFL's gone now in terms of the athletic quarterback and using guys, in two different ways. And so not sure how I would answer that, but I do think, Peyton was unique and different and the best we've ever seen it at playing before the snap, where a lot of guys like myself were way better playing after the snap than before.
Yeah, I also mentioned Joe Namath because he won the singular most important game in NFL history. He brought about a merger. It's hard to argue with anybody else. There were better quarterbacks, but he guaranteed it. He did it.
Yep.
All eyes on that, and one of the biggest upsets we've ever seen. And so I would probably say Joe was the most impactful quarterback of all time because of that one moment.
Yeah. Well, and I think he also was the first quarterback to throw for 4,000 yards or something in a league too. So, I mean, he was doing
games,
things
probably.
Yeah, it was doing things that people weren't doing at that time. I didn't grow up seeing a lot of Joe Namath. So, I think of, more of my time. But yeah, I mean, with everything that he did and the guaranteed victory and throwing the ball the way he did, I could surely make that argument.
God, he threw a pretty good ball.
He did.
Like effortless.
Yeah.
Just, I bet the best passer of best quarterback at throwing the ball is who?
At throwing the ball. Wait, and what do you mean by that? Like,
which one is? You see certain pitchers and they make every pitch. But
if I was picking a guy, I would probably pick Dan Marino. Just watching him throw and the release that he had and the arm strength, but also the touch on the football. He was the guy that that I grew up kind of going, man, if you can throw the ball like that, I mean, that would be tried to emulate him in my front yard because I thought he was that special of a thrower of a football that maybe that I've ever seen.
What did you say to him when you met him?
Well, I mean, I was in awe like a lot of people, but I probably said that exact thing. It's like, man, I grew up, trying to be you and, wanting to be what you were on a football field. And I obviously shared the story at my Hall of Fame speech that when I was stocking shelves at the grocery store, I was in the cereal aisle. And one of the nights I was stocking the Wheaties box. And Dan Marino was on the Wheaties box. And so he gave me a lot of inspiration when I was, chasing my dream and stocking shelves going, hey, one day I'm going to be like Dan Marino and I'm going to be on a Wheaties box. It's just fun to have those guys that, that you want to emulate, that you want to chase after. And then you meet a guy like Dan, who's such a great individual too, that lived up to the hype, not only with what he did on the field, but also who he was off the field.
Have fun this weekend. Good to catch up with you again. Thank you, Kurt.
You too, my man.
Kurt Warner, Hall of Famer. Vikings-Browns on NFL Network this weekend. They will start at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on NFL Network in London.